So while all of us football fans were kind of, busy looking forward to all the, either the break or the festive fixtures, if you're, into the Premier Leagues, which most of you are. Yeah, we had a bit of a, I'd say it's a bit of a bombshell news, maybe a little bit out of the blue, unless you were really following the ESL court, the case with the ESL brought to the European Court of Justice. So that decision was finally announced by the European Court of Justice and the decision was that UEFA and FIFA's law, actions were deemed uncompetitive. And of course, this was UEFA and FIFA renouncing the proposed European Super League, which it kind of feels like history now. I mean, it is over. We are sort of coming to nearly 3 years since we had that. Infamous moment where, the ESL clubs, the original, of course, you remember Real Madrid, Barcelona, Juventus, Manchester United, Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, all came out. I think that was it. Or AC Milan, Inter Milan, they all said, we're going to launch this European Super League, which I'm not going to go into detail. It's pretty much an exclusive club. There was not going to be any promotion, relegation. It was guaranteed. And look, there have been tons of videos, coverage, stories about it. And, in a nutshell, it was a very, very highly unpopular move. And ultimately, only Barcelona, Juventus, and Real Madrid were left out of that, the original Super League. Funnily, but yeah, so a lot has happened since then. We've had, and in fact, I guess it brings us to this point here. And look, I just want to get it out there. Look, the Premier League's my number one league. Is my bread and butter in terms of football. It's the league I grew up with, and La Liga, the Bundesliga, Liga, and Serie A. I mean, I should say Serie A. I guess La Liga, Serie A, and that order, Bundesliga, Liga, because that's the sort of the following order. I do follow them relatively closely, but certainly not in the same capacity as the Premier League. And so, but what I found, and this is sort of no offense to the Premier League and most of the football media, which makes up a good 90% chunk of what we read, because obviously most of English is the lingua franca of this world, and the Premier League is naturally in English, so the coverage is English. So yeah, there is a natural bias for the Premier League. But look, I think if you were to look at the perspectives of the key proponents of the Super League, particularly Real Madrid's president Florentino Perez, who there is a little bit of bias against maybe and almost by the English media, that maybe perhaps the Premier League has got a may have more advantages than you think, and I don't think it's a clear black and white. ESL's the devil, and the rest of football, UEFA, FIFA is angelic, which it clearly isn't. This is a very, very grey area, and I thought I just want to explain, why that is. Why maybe even the ESL. There's, or just explain why the ESL actually. I can see where they come. Look, Premier League is clearly the number one league, and it is in terms of following and in terms of revenue. And in fact, I think it is. Look, I think there was sort of I think there was a video by Tifo IRL the other day about why the Premier League is so far ahead of the other leagues. And I think there was a question. I sort of made a comment. Well, the Premier League, obviously, the Premier League was the pioneer in terms of what modern football is today. They started, of course, back in 1992. And every other league in Europe has been playing catch up ever since. And I think someone mentioned that, look, in fact, there's not really much catch up. The Premier League's not, and I think that is actually kind of true. Look, the Premier League remains ahead in terms of revenues, media coverage, and all that. And look, I think the likes of La Liga, Bundesliga, Liga, Serie A have definitely made some ground. But then I guess you could say that some is a bit of an understatement. I think you look at the new record, you take for instance the new television deal that the Premier League announced, 13.7 billion US dollars, and more games for its broadcasters Sky and TNT. By the way, more on that Sky and TNT, and that sort of explains the decision by the European Court of Justice. And you compare that with La Liga's deal, which was at the moment, I guess we're looking at. Oh well, this is the. Yes, so the Spain's La Liga, for instance, is on a $5.29 billion deal from 2022 to 23 and until 2026 to 27. So look, the Premier League, it's the Premier League is in a to quote a very respected football writer, Guillermo Balart. Look, the Super League is in fact really the Premier League is the real European Super League, because when you have as I highlight, when you have got a Premier League that's able to command twice the amount of money the other leagues are having, like La Liga. And look, $5.29 billion is not cheap. It's not small change. It is a lot of money, but the fact is the Premier League is just getting an obscene amount of money, and that's why you see clubs like like Nottingham Forest, Bournemouth being able to afford players like Keylor Navas, or they're able to get them out on loan, or ahead, and they're able to buy out the likes of former Serie A champions, juggernauts, Juventus, Inter, AC Milan. They're able to buy these players, and it's just like this is it seems unthinkable, but that's just the way the state of the economy is. And I guess that leads us to why this European why this. I think look, they did. I think people seem to think that the European Super League will successfully shut down in 2021, but really, it hasn't, and UEFA and FIFA feel threatened by by this concept of a rebel Super League. And look, that's why UEFA's gone. That's why UEFA have expanded the Champions League. That's why they've ditched the group stage format for more, for a format that will guarantee more games to the bigger, to its members. Going for the Swiss league format, which will remain. I've covered that in a sort of like a video, which was a bit of an ode to the group stages of the Champions League. That's why FIFA had this Club World Cup, because I guess they have to protect their revenue. They have to protect their revenue streams. They have to protect their stakeholders, which are obviously the big clubs, not just not your Barcelona's, Real Madrid's, Bayern Munich, Juventus, but the Premier League clubs. They need to keep that, and I guess certainly this format, whether it will totally negate any threats, as I'd say, by this revamped ESL by EA22 remains to be seen. But look, I guess in the 2 years since the ESL became a thing, you can see UEFA and FIFA are really working. They're going to work to the bone to ensure that the ESL just never gets to ground. And I guess looking at the sports, I think rugby, we've seen that with the World Series, the Kerry Packers series. You saw that with Super League and Rugby League, the World Series cricket. It seems like football is just going through that phase, and I think what we'll see now, I think with the fact is that the European Court of Justice, which has always leaned towards maintaining competition, is why, as I was mentioning before, the Premier League, which in the past only had Sky as its main broadcaster, had to split it between. You had to split the rights between two broadcasters. It initially was Setanta, and then Setanta went bust, and it reverted to ESPN, and then there was BT Sport, now TNT. I guess it's not really a surprise that they've come across this rule. And of course, UEFA and FIFA are, they're not exactly saints in the world. I mean, they've in fact, there is, you could argue that the European Court of Justice is going to, perhaps maybe has some bone to pick with them to say, look, you are, it's pretty much, you're just as bad as these guys, made out to be by the media. So not surprisingly, A22, the company behind the ESL, have come up with a proposal that, on paper is a bit more palatable. I mean, they are looking at 90, I think the word was 96 clubs involved, promotion, relegation, then of course, then going into the quarterfinals, semifinals, and the finals. Look, I guess, yeah, so I mean, that's certainly a vast change from the first format, which was a bit more exclusive. But yeah, look, it doesn't hide the fact that the ESL is effectively ring fencing football for, the big club, the so-called bigger clubs from the rest of the, football hierarchies across Europe. And effectively, it is going against what makes football so unique. As it's not just England, but your France, Germany, Italy, Spain, or every single nation in the world has a club football pyramid. And the beauty of football is that you effectively can move up the pyramid. It's you could be that's why Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds bought into the Wrexham, wanted to buy a club in England. They bought Wrexham on the premise that in theory Wrexham could make it up from the National League all the way to the Premier League in X amount of years, and that's what makes football so special. So that's why the original ESL was always doomed to fail. That's why in the eyes of the traditional football fans. And look, even the efforts to try and recreate this, it's not necessarily winning any more fans. But you can see what they're doing. Look, I mean, as I said, La Liga, the Bundesliga, all four leagues. I would not be. I haven't done research into this. I would not be surprised if they don't even match whatever the Premier League is going to get in the next couple of years in terms of TV revenues. And I mean, I mean, no disrespect to like the likes of Girona, Getafe, Heidenheim, these clubs that have sort of benefited because of this traditional pyramid structure where they can go from nowhere to being able to compete for La Liga, for in Girona's case, or going to Europe. I guess you're thinking of the big clubs like Real Madrid, Barcelona. They have to go and then you even look at Germany, for example, like Hamburg, Schalke, all those two clubs that are in the Zweite Bundesliga. They have to, they need to spend to improve their size so they can compete with Bayern Munich, who are always guaranteed to be in the Champions League. And look, I'm not saying they've spent well, but the trouble is, in football, they're not, football, yes, football is win, lose, or draw. The margins are so finite, and you could have the best organization, you could and you still come up short, and I think the reality is that with this pyramid structure that it doesn't bode financially well, for these clubs like Barcelona, Real Madrid, all these clubs to and even like Getafe to go and progress, and so that you could see that argument there. Look, obviously I'm trying not to give any sympathies to Fiorentino Perez, not trying to give any sympathies to Juan Laporta, or or any of these, they are big chairmen who have lots of money, their own personal interests at stake. So I'm not trying to give sympathy to that, but I can see why they're coming up with the ESL and why they're wanting to challenge the current status quo. And I guess with this decision now, the fact now they do have some ammunition behind them. They have that outside FIFA and UEFA. They've got the legal system behind them, and I think that would certainly motivate them. Whether it succeeds remains to be seen. Look, I mean, the one thing about football, I think that for years and years, it's you've had particularly in Europe, it's been like each country has its own league and its league structure. I mean, you have the odd example like where for example in Switzerland you have Liechtenstein clubs competing in the Swiss Super League structure. You've got, of course, your Newports, Cardiff, Wrexham, Swansea, all competing in the English league rather than the Welsh league. And it, but I guess in effect it's still been a national thing, and whether that structure is going to be changed, which wouldn't surprise me if it did, because look, I mean, you're thinking you're not just, I mean, looking outside your Bundesliga, the big five, you're thinking what about the other countries in Europe, Poland, Austria, Czech Republic, Denmark, Sweden, the Scandinavian nations. Perhaps pulling together into one Super League is not necessarily the worst thing possible, where they could maybe be able to attract a broadcasting deal that is, equivalent to, if not more than, the Premier League. And that could very well be the only way to gain equality and compete with the Premier League clubs. Because look, the Premier League clubs don't need the Super League, so I think they would feel the most threatened by the Super League, along with the Champions League, with UEFA and FIFA. But you're thinking like, your small clubs, the smaller leagues, I should say, the bigger clubs in smaller leagues, like how the heck is Red Bull Salzburg or Legia Warsaw ever going to compete with the big teams? And maybe the Super League is possibly the idea. I think, but we shall see. Look, there is plenty more. We're only speculating at this point. The decision only came out. It's certainly a big move, and look, I don't think it's I don't think it's black and white, angel versus, like with the angels of FIFA, UEFA versus the Satan or Lucifer, aka Fiorentino Perez and his and Juan Laporta at the A22 ESL. I think there is a whole lot more. I certainly think there is a lot of biases by English fans. Of course, the English media, they will be protecting the Premier League because most of their press is based in England. The Premier League is a British idea. There has to be some sort of element to protect their own product, which has done really, really well for the last 30 years. And it's not. I don't think its existence is never going to be threatened. I think it's getting stronger and stronger. But I think the point is that the fact is the Premier League is the Premier League. The bubble doesn't look like it's going to cease. The Premier League is going to just get stronger and stronger. Your Crystal Palaces, Brightons are just gonna have more muscle than your Inters, Romas, Milans, Marseilles, etc. And I guess this this is sort of the rest of the world's answer to try and counter that. So that's my thoughts on the ESL. Look, I know it is interesting. Most of the clubs are certainly against it, which is, I get in principle that that does not surprise me at all. And I think at the moment it feels like the ESL is really like, I think to quote one president, it's really much like finding a Christmas present with and only opening it to find an empty box in there. So that might very well be it. But we shall see over the next 24 months what happens. So look, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the ESL. What, is it still going to be a thing? Or is it just a bit of a fad? And I guess maybe the 2 years that have lapsed have given UEFA and FIFA, the edge they needed to effectively kill off the ESL again. So look, if you like this video, feel free to like and don't forget to subscribe.